Twisted Metal Head-On is a weird game to talk about. The best way to describe it is probably Twisted Metal 2, made in 2005, for the PSP. In a literal sense, it's a direct sequel to Twisted Metal 2, ignoring all the games that have come since then. But in a more figurative sense, it's a remake of Twisted Metal 2, using most of the same characters, concepts, and even some maps, but improved and updated for more modern hardware. Head-On is like a what-if scenario that asks, what if Twisted Metal was made 10 years later? The story is once again that Calypso is holding his usual tournament, taking place in various locations around the world. Drivers new and old compete to destroy the competition and claim their prize of a single, unreality-bound wish. Calypso himself has been redesigned once more, now looking to be an amalgamation of every version of him that's come before. His hair is long, on the sides at least, like his 2 to 4 incarnations, but bald on top like Twisted Metal Black. He wears a black jacket like always, but unlike Twisted Metal Black Calypso, he bothered to put a shirt on this time. His face is once again free of burns, but he retains the eye scar from Black, though thankfully his personality and demeanor are based on Mel McMurran's portrayal of the character, a grandiose, maniacal trickster who enjoys torturing his contestants and laughing about it the whole time. Speaking of contestants, there's a lot of them this time, and unlike the other games, which tended to cop out on the unlockable characters, every character in Head-On has a full ending cutscene that will be unlocked when you finish the story mode with them. Most playable characters are either from a previous tournament or, at the very least, inspired by a previous contestant. While this results in a collection of fan-favorite vehicles, the amount of returning cars offsets the addition of any new ones, with the only entirely original vehicles being a trailer home and an ATV, both of which are just unlockable boss enemies. The other thing I find slightly disappointing about the roster is the complete lack of minion, making this the first time the tank-driving demon doesn't appear in a main Twisted Metal game as either a boss or a playable character. Luckily, the game itself more than makes up for those tiny annoyances, with the smoothest gameplay the series has to offer. Driving feels perfect in Head-On, not too fast, not too slow, not too loose, and not too rigid. You can easily maneuver yourself across obstacles and dodge projectiles to your heart's content, all without feeling like you're losing control. I feel I can lead my shots much easier and don't feel nervous when dealing with areas filled with bottomless pits. Unless, of course, we're talking about the new secret areas. Secret areas are now available as hidden teleporters that bring you to special obstacle courses that require you to usually platform in a car, which is surprisingly not as terrible as it sounds. They're actually really fun little mini-games that test your command of your vehicle and reward you with extra levels and characters for completing them. I much prefer this to the obtuse, god-awful jumping around you had to do to get the secrets in Black. The levels themselves are pretty good for the most part, large, multi-tiered, and focused, while still being open enough for proper maneuvering. They could do with a bit more of a saturation boost if I'm being honest, though. A little too much gray and brown for my taste, especially since the series is supposed to be going back to its over-the-top origins. And on the subject of said origins, some of these maps are pretty clearly inspired by other games in the series. Los Angeles is very similar to its original counterpart, as are Paris and the rooftops. Head-On also sees the return of the level select from Twisted Metal Black, that allows you to choose which of the 2 stages you'd like to take on next, meaning you can play the game a handful of times and always get a different collection of battlegrounds to play through. There's 10 levels in total, with an additional 11th level, Transylvania, being added to the PlayStation 2 port, meaning that the PS2 version is technically a little more difficult as it has an extra stage, but it has the addition of split-screen contest, which would completely offset that. Not to mention, it's not really an issue at all, as Twisted Metal Head-On isn't a very hard game to beat. It's not Twisted Metal Small Brawl easy. It provides a decent challenge, and especially the final boss Tower Tooth, but it's nowhere near the ball-crushing and occasionally unfair difficulty that was Twisted Metal 1 or Black. Health pickups appear at a reasonable rate, and weapons actually do visible damage to opponents, so you don't feel like you're just pumping lead into a wall. Though on the weapons front, much like the cars, there's no real new additions to speak of. There's a few reconfigured ones, such as the Reticle being retitled to Swarm, or Ricochet being redesigned into a laser disc thing. Same goes for your special moves, which are all pretty much what they've been for years at this point. Freeze, jump, shield, you know the drill. The endings of Twisted Metal Head-On have also harkened back to Twisted Metal 2, being presented as a motion comic with voice acting over top. Said voice acting is, for the most part, done by modern voice talents most of us would be familiar with from other games and animations. Needless to say, they do a good job and deliver their lines with a perfect amount of seriousness, but also some overblown camp to match Twisted Metal's bombastic style.
I think it's time for a change.
That's your wish? You want a facelift?
Not quite. I think you've had enough fun for a while.
Nobody makes you compete, Needles.
Right, of course not. Not at all.
Make your wish and claim your prize already. I have things to do that don't involve you.
The canon is, of course, completely shot at this point, and a few of these endings play with that idea a little bit.
We've been doing this a long time, haven't we? You hold a twisted metal, I kill and destroy for you. I make a wish, you continue to sit on your throne, surrounded by your guards and women.
There's also some subtle attempts at possible world building, some of it related to characters like Sweet Tooth or Krista, Calypso's daughter, but mostly surrounding Twisted Metal itself and its existence. Or perhaps non-existence.
I knew my beautiful daughter would make me proud.
No, don't.
What is it, my darling?
When you summoned my spirit, you told me that it would only be temporary, and that once I won Twisted Metal, I'd be able to wish for my mortal life back.
That's correct, my dear. What is the problem?
What's the problem? You didn't want to help me! You just wanted another contestant to help kill all those innocent people! You destroy everything and run around like you own the world!
You don't understand.
What happened to my daddy? The daddy I knew was kind and loving. Not someone who would do these horrible and unspeakable things.
Please, it had to be like this. Otherwise, your mind would not...
Daddy, I wish the car accident that killed me and Mommy never happened.
Granted.
Push me, Daddy!
Coming, Krista.
Higher, Daddy! Higher!
Sleep well, my dear. Hopefully this will give you some peace until you're able to wake up. Congratulations. You've won this year's Twisted Metal. You may claim your prize.
I know none of this is real.
Twisted Metal is as real as you want it to be. And apparently you want it to be very real. Needles.
Wait, well, I don't understand. Are you saying I've got something to do with all this death and destruction?
The world is as you see it. Your mind is a powerful thing, Mr. Kane.
Stop it! You're confusing me! Enough of this! I wish this nightmare would end once and for all!
There are some wishes even I can't grant completely, Needles.
But the lore of the games is presented in such a cryptic and contradictory way that it's hard to tell exactly what the developers were going for. Head-On was a PSP launch title, and as such, was pretty successful considering this was before the PSP was found to be easily moddable and hackers killed the system's profits in the West. This death of the PSP led to many PSP exclusives being ported to the PlayStation 2 around 2006 to 2008. Head-On was no exception, but Eat Sleep Play went above and beyond with this port, making it easily the definitive version of the game. Twisted Metal Head-On Extra Twisted Edition, released in 2008, not only featured the PSP game with split-screen multiplayer and improved visuals, but also contained a slew of interviews and behind-the-scenes content, most of which we've already discussed throughout the series. Sweet Tour, the Lost Twisted Metal 1 endings, the playable beta of Harbor City, a whole lot of cool stuff that totally makes this game worth tracking down even if you own the PSP release. Well, if you have the extra cash lying around, because despite being a PS2 game from 10 years ago, due to the fact it's a PS2 game from 10 years ago, the game didn't sell millions or anything, so a copy can still run you from $30 to $70 depending on its condition. and there's no PS3 or PS4 re-release to speak of like Twisted Metal Black. But whatever system you decide to use, you should definitely play Twisted Metal head-on, and I can't recommend it enough. While a lot of its content is derivative, it's also classic Twisted Metal gameplay polished to a mirror-like sheen, and in my opinion is the best game in the franchise, and a perfect jumping off point for newcomers with its smooth controls and balanced difficulty. And with another game down that almost does it for Apocalypso, we've only got one game remaining. The simply titled Twisted Metal on PS3 is the final game in the series to be released to date, and the only thing left to do is dive straight in and see if this game could have saved the franchise, or placed the final nail in its coffin.